Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Purdy. Thanks for having me, and hi, everyone. So my name is Corinna, and I'm one of the founders of CocoRio. So essentially, what we do is we match families with fully vetted creatives, so musicians, actors, dancers, for flexible, quality, part-time childcare. So we don't just sort of look after the kids' sort of survival. We actually offer them amazing tools to develop as creative individuals, to offer them a better future, and to look after their well-being. Yeah, we launched in 2020, and we've been running since. We're based in London, and yeah, I think that's as short as an intro as I can make.
Awesome. And can you just talk a little bit first about your fundraising journey? So how much you've raised and kind of the makeup of the fundraiser, whether it's friends and family, any angels, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched in 2020 after sort of being part of an accelerator with Bayes Business School at the time. And that was where we essentially developed the idea, and we kind of realized that it was a viable idea. We were still in full-time jobs, so it was very much a kind of yeah, sort of fun exercise to do. We weren't really sure we were going to go for it. But that pitch at the end of that accelerator led us to actually receive valuable feedback that the idea was actually valuable. And then off the top of that, we had a business plan ready and essentially a pitch deck. So we did share that among our network. At the time, it was very, very limited. And so we raised 50K just essentially to prove that the concept was actually doable in practice. We had some plans to use that for technology and marketing essentially, but we really had no savings ourselves. We were fairly young at the time, and we also were in other jobs. So it was just to get us started. So we got 50K from friends and family, which at the time was 10% of a business. And I'm glad we picked the right person. I would say that was because obviously 10% of the business is quite a lot, but we had no other way essentially to start it at the time. So this person has then followed on with some debt investment as well, about 80K in the next couple of years. So that's kind of led us to our real first fundraising effort really last year, which was our pre-seed. And so we were initially fundraising for about £340,000, then sort of up that to 500,000, because obviously we were looking at our business interests and what the market looked like and runway. But we in the end settled for 255. So we received some follow-on investment from our initial angel, and then a little bit more of angel money, I guess. So a sort of makeup of friends and family and angel. We had quite a lot of conversations with private family offices and VCs, but this sort of didn't lead to the right place just yet. We're still very much in those conversations, but realize essentially if we can get any money right now in this climate, best to take it, best to get started. We're still in the process of developing our technology, which is what we really want to show to the investors next time. So we thought, well, let's just pause this right now. Let's build what we need to build, because obviously there's always battles that you need to pick when running a business, and that's what we sort of focus on. And so next time we'll be we'll probably fundraise for a much larger amount, and with a sort of different approach, having had the traction from the sort of tech element.
Yeah, I imagine the conversations that you were having with friends and family might have been a bit different to the conversations that you were having with angel investors, especially if you had to build the relationship from scratch. And some of the things that we've been talking about throughout this week has been kind of proving that you're onto something with very early traction. So how did you weave any traction that you did have into the conversations? And was it a different conversation with friends and family versus the angel investors? And how did you kind of pitch it to the different groups?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because with friends and family, obviously they know you personally, so they kind of know that you're someone who doesn't give up, who's got a really good drive, and who's going to be resilient and who can make this happen. They know you personally, which helps. If you are, someone who can really sort of show that you can make this work. But then obviously with angels, they don't know you just yet, so it's about building that relationship. And actually, one thing that I've realize, I mean, obviously we talk a lot about female founders and the sort of landscape for, if you are a female founder. I never thought it would be this difficult, to be perfectly honest. My co-founder is also woman, and I just never encountered as much I guess resistance initially in any sector really, in anything professional that I've done before. So this was quite a shock, because it really looked like I had to sort of I guess, yeah, really earn this trust, and really prove that, yes, I am capable. Yes, I have all the skills and all the tools, and we have amazing traction to show. So for us, it was about, sort of really building that trust, building that network of people. We've worked a lot with, we've essentially didn't have a network to begin with. So we've tried to speak to as many founders as possible in a sort of similar space, asking them for tips and tricks, really, founders who may have fundraised before, sort of really understand who are the types of investors that may invest in our business. And then with the angels, to be honest, these have actually proved harder sometimes to sell to, if you like, than the VCs or the family offices, because maybe they are a bit more DIY, they've got their own approach. Everyone is looking for something different, as opposed to, yeah, these are the metrics that we should be looking at in your sector. So it is about that sort of personal connection with the angel, and sort of building that trust from early on, and understand what they want. And for the majority of, times it doesn't really work, because everyone's different, but then sometimes that can click. And yeah, we were just really idealistic, I guess, in the sense that we were hoping we would get more female investors, and that's not really happened, which is surprising given the nature of our industry, I guess, but it is what it is.
Was there a challenge when you were talking about the market opportunity? One of the other things that we've been going through yesterday was the slide where you talk about the total addressable market and the services. One sec, sorry. It's just because I've got Emma in the room now. Did you find it challenging to get investors to buy into the scale of the opportunity, or did you find that part of the conversation quite easy?
Yeah, so I guess the crazy thing about CocoRio is that our market technically is huge, right? Childcare already exists, so it's not a new service or a new product. Like, it's something that people are spending a lot of money on. Like, parents are spending about 30% of their income in childcare, so they're already spending a lot of money, and the quality is pretty low. So for us, it was kind of a rather easy, you'd think it's an easy sell, because you're essentially saying the market is this big. We looked at the sort of worldwide spend in childcare, right, which obviously is not just the only market, but is the sort of main one. But people are pushing back when you're looking at, the sort of bottom up situation, right? You want to kind of show both the top down and the bottom up. You want to kind of show this is the massive opportunity worldwide. This is what the market's doing. It's growing. People are spending money. But then you also want to be showing, well, actually in London or wherever you're starting from, for example, families, there's tot families, there's tot kids. If I can get 1% of them, this is what I can achieve. And this 1% is in this area because I can address people in this area. And so the pushback for us was never on the market size, because obviously it is obviously big because it already exists essentially, but it was more like, how can you make sure that you can actually reach these people with scale, right? Because the way you start normally is very much sort of hyper local, and so maybe you don't spend much money on marketing, and until you get any money, you can't really spend much money on marketing, so you can't prove that you're going to nail that down. But it's about trying every little thing, right? If there's anything that you can show, for example, like retention of your customers, or how many referrals, they give you all these things are sort of data points that they will look at, although you may not have that, oh, I spend 10K on marketing every month and this is how much return I get. So yeah, if you're very early stage, you may need to sort of be creative with what metrics you give, and really try to track all those behaviors about of your customers as much as you can.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm going to pass over Emma to Emma, who's going to ask some questions. Thanks everyone for bearing with us at the beginning and having me join from my phone. I'm going to get my laptop whilst Emma is questioning, and then we'll be back in the room properly.
So we do that horrible thing when like two Zoom devices are next to each other and the microphone just kind of cause it to lose its mind. It's still happening. Wait, I think you need to mute. Is that, yeah, okay, we're back. I think, no, we're not. Maybe just like hide your phone, or I don't know if that's the room. Anyway, sorry, Corinna. Talk to me a little bit at the start when you were going live with your product. Obviously, when it has to do with childcare, parents' first question is going to be around safety and trust. So when you're an early stage startup and you have to convey that to new customers, how do you do that?
Yeah, so for us, we literally launched in 2020. Oh, I can hear some feedback.
Is it coming through okay?
I think it's fine now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we launched in 2020, so it was the worst time, right? We couldn't even operate for a while. All our plans had to sort of, essentially fold for a little bit. But what we did was literally fake it till you make it. We played it. We sort of build the brand to a certain extent, showing that the brand was bigger than it actually was, right? We didn't have that many customers, but we already behaved in a way, we built systems that would sort of automate things as much as possible. We'd have feedback systems, ways to like really processes and ways to check in with the customers so that, we would look more professional than what we actually were, which was two people working part-time while being furloughed or whatever that was. So we really tried our best to like look as professional and as grown up as a business as we could. And that obviously, did convey the sort of nanny agency, trust. Obviously, we had to build a website and some sort of easy to use resources. We built a few blogs and sort of little things, I guess. But then we really tried to implement anything that came in terms of feedback from our customers, because that was the main point, right? Although we didn't have that many creatives and customers, we tried to like really listen to each and every one of them. And then when that happens, for every industry, you'll have different ways to navigate that trust, right? And for us, we've had to, for a while, compromise on our USP and specificities, if you like, and really test the sort of safe narratives. So for us, it's anything to do with, what is the vetting process for your nannies? Obviously, we vet them as well, but that is not our only USP, if it makes sense. But we created a lot of content around that, a lot of reassurance, and really tested all of these for like Facebook ads and online as much as possible to see what were the sort of narratives that would get people to come in and to feel reassured enough to actually sign up. And so we've figured out there's a few sort of specific narratives that work. One is about, one of our founders picking nannies for herself essentially at the beginning. That sort of works really well. One is just a general sort of vetting process and what differentiates us from other agencies. And we just use that as a kind of part of, as part of the funnel to make customers warm, right? People won't usually sign up like at the very beginning. They want to see your ads, they want to interact with your brand for a little bit. And so if you do give them that content that they're looking for, then they will be more likely to then sign up and eventually try the service. But even if you're super early stage, just a few blogs, a few like pieces of content that you can repurpose done really, really well can actually be, really beneficial.
In terms of building a marketplace business at the beginning, did you and your co-founder divide like who focuses on which side of the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we both came from a creative background. So we were both the creatives that essentially we would have been employing and finding work for. But she essentially became a parent throughout the process. So she was expecting her first child while we were essentially launching the business. And so she could really see that sort of parent side of things as well, which really helped. And at the beginning, that's exactly what we did. So I focused a lot more on the recruitment and building a sort of funnel for the creatives, and she focused a lot more on the parent side. Going forward, that is the real sort of difficulty, because it's a sort of chicken and egg situation. And I'd really recommend everyone to read the Cold Start Problem if you're trying to build a marketplace. But essentially we didn't know much about the theory, to be perfectly honest, and we just sort of did it all in practice as we went along. And now looking back and like learning a lot more about, network effects and how these operate, we actually can spot that we did a few sort of key things that were really, really useful. But they're all, to be honest, pretty much like common sense. So like, you want to start, because it's hard to acquire both sides, you want to make sure that you give incentives to one of them, or you really understand them, or you go somewhere where one of the two parts really has a massive need and it's underserved by competitors or anyone else. So we did all of these things. We just weren't fully aware we were doing them. And now that we can actually use them to our advantage a lot more.
In terms of using incentives to scale the marketplace, or I mean, even to startups who aren't building marketplace businesses, using incentives to get new customers, how do you do that as a startup when you're not, VC backed and you can't say, oh, first £100 is on us?
Yeah, so obviously we didn't give sort of monetary incentives, which is probably not, that would have worked a lot better, I guess. But for us, it was really going into those places where families really struggle. Well, we essentially had to build our service a little bit, so kind of shape it to what people in a specific area needed. So we, for instance, during COVID, obviously had to offer some online sessions, and we did because that's what people needed. They needed homework support. That's not creative childcare. That's not what we offer, but we still kind of went for it, and we made the service as flexible as possible to make sure that they actually found what they needed in us, which is not, it's not necessarily what you want to be doing on the long term, but it can really get you those first initial customers that can then sort of really buy into the business and really support you. So kind of bend a little bit to what they need. We also looked at places like Crouch End, for example, in London, which is an area where lots of families are based, but not many young people who usually work as nannies are based, right? And so we really focused on an area like that to be able to attract parents who will go where there's already Facebook groups of people looking for work or looking for this specific service or product. In terms of other incentives, we have referral schemes on both ends, and you'll be surprised people don't use them as much. So you're not actually going to give as many free sessions or as many rewards as you want, but people like to know that they're involved, and there's a few types of people, I guess, that specifically like that, and so it's nice to do that. So for our creatives, we call it 2 pints referral, so it's like £10. I don't know if you can buy 2 pints anymore, but essentially that's at least a way to sort of engage them in the process, and yeah, I guess we don't sort of lose any money on it because we only use it when someone then starts to work and starts to earn. So again, you can always find a way to make sure that the incentive is given once you've sort of sold a product or a service. So for us, that's essentially like, please refer people as soon as they start working. We may lose all the profits, but at least we don't lose any money further.
I like that 2 pints referral. I'd love to hear what you've learned about getting customer user feedback, because I guess one of the unique things about your business, and perhaps like healthcare as well, you have the creatives, the parents, and then the kids. And obviously the parents are the one paying, the kids are the one receiving it, and then the creatives are the one providing it. So what have you learned about keeping all three stakeholders, I hate that word stakeholders, it sounds so dry, but keeping all three parties happy?
It is so hard because I'd love to get more information from the kids, right? I'd love to get the kids' feedback. Ultimately, why we do this is because we want kids to be happy, we want kids to develop as well as possible. But that is obviously the hardest part. And some families will say, oh, kid's name, loved it, yeah, that's as far as it gets usually. So you get a lot of feedback from parents and a lot of feedback from creatives, actually a lot more from the parents, because creatives are earning through this and that's enough for them for the majority of time. Then there's a few that are really, really highly engaged. So parents, I guess it's preempting those worries, because you will receive some negative feedback, and that's sometimes due to just the fact that you are not what they were looking for. And so especially when you're a young business, and if you're a service business, you want to be as clear as you can in terms of what you actually are offering. So for a while we were getting lots of requests, for example, for a music session, just a one-off. There's no benefit, you're not going to see your kid becoming more musical after 2 hours if they're 3 years old and it's the first time they meet a stranger. So for us, getting those types of feedback pointers was very useful, because we were like, well, first of all, we know how to set our expectations in terms of, well, this is a long process. This is how child development works. It's not a one-off situation, but it's also useful to sell more recurring products and services, which actually is probably what you want to do as a business. So if you have that issue of the feedback being first time doesn't work, then there's always an upside. From creatives, we always run surveys, and they're actually quite useful. You always get people who are very happy and very unhappy to give feedback, so take that with a pinch of salt. Sometimes when we receive, we've received like 2 very negative Google reviews, and I obviously like take them very personally, like it happens, right? And you're like, I did everything for this customer, they have very unrealistic expectations, I managed all their expectations, this and that, and they're still unhappy. And 3 months after stopping the service, they went on Google and wrote a review. Like, how bad, you know, they must have felt, right, using our service to do that. But again, people go through their own issues, right? And they may just have a really bad day or feel like, you know, they paid too much for something that wasn't worth it. So, you know, again, it's like, you'll never make everyone happy anyway, so it's okay to get negative reviews. And I've definitely got a bit desensitized. But what you want to be doing is every time you get some feedback, even positive or negative, actually look at it and make sure that you are trying to implement it if it's useful, or at least evaluating whether it's useful. So it could be implementing a feedback form, or we called our customers quite a lot, especially after the first session at the beginning when we had the capacity, because you really want to get as much information as you can, and that will actually help you shape not only the service or product itself, but also how you operate and how you present it, which I think for us was the main struggle, because the service hasn't really changed, but the way we talk about it really has. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, you did. And you started to answer my next question as well. I want to get as granular as possible on like the customer feedback loop. And so what percentage of your customers are you calling? How many questions do you ask them? How do you make sure that they answer the questions? And then for the survey, how long after the service do you wait? So this is super detailed, but I'm hoping it's going to be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So we try to call each and every customer after the session. To be perfectly honest, very little amount of people picks up the phone nowadays. We do have someone working from Brazil who can therefore work quite long hours in the evening, which helps. So he sometimes calls customers back at like between 6 and 8 p.m., which is actually a good time to check in. Obviously, it's not, you know, it doesn't mean they'll pick up, but they'll be more likely. Or during lunch break is also a good time, or very, very early in the morning. So we're trying to figure out what's the best time. Once we've called them, we also use WhatsApp for Business, which really helps as well, because we obviously do send them an email. We have 2 sort of feedback emails. So the first one that we send is pretty general. We're just asking for feedback, and it's pretty open-ended, because essentially we don't want to be leading them to say anything specific, although we have a different one for each service. So again, we're kind of trying to like keep it open-ended, but like reflect to what we're trying to do. And when they do reply to that, or they reply to a call with positive feedback, then we have a second feedback email that we can share immediately, saying, please help us by leaving a review. Whatever you've just told us or written, we'd love to have it showing on Google. And that really helps, because you build that personal rapport. They know you're a startup business. They are kind of bought into the concept, and they try to refer you as well. For the survey, I would say, again, you always get like 5s or 0s, right? So that's what you do. But to be perfectly honest, you can really shape that to whatever you need. We've asked lots of questions also to do with what they want from our tech developments, which was really, really helpful, both to parents and to creatives. And for creatives, we just are not afraid to spam them. So we really send them quite a lot of emails. So if we were to send a survey out next Monday, for example, we would then send a reminder on Wednesday, and then a sort of final call on Friday. And this will probably just only be on for like a week or a week and a half, because you don't want to be keeping things open-ended, because then people just don't take the opportunity to respond. So you want to tell them, please, you know, fill that in by this date. We'll send you reminders. You also want to do some sort of prize draw, you know, an Amazon voucher, or if you've got something better to offer. And that can sometimes get people that maybe also, you know, looking for money. For us, obviously the creators are looking for work through us, so that's a kind of win-win situation. For families, even the prize incentives haven't worked really well, so the sort of general survey doesn't seem to be working that well. You do get a few people that do that if they get free service from you as an exchange, but it's very, very small numbers. So for us, it's more that personal report, and that is possible because of what we're selling, I guess, because we already speak to them about their kids. It probably wouldn't be possible in the same way if we were selling something else.
Makes sense. There's so many good marketplace specific questions coming in the chat. We're going to get to those really shortly. In terms of testing different messages and finding out what resonates, it's hard not to get, but like there's so many different messages that you could be testing, and then when you have a marketplace, it's like that times two. So how do you make sure you're just not like testing different things all the time? And when do you decide, okay, this is the message we want to go with, I'm going to ignore the 10 others that I also have on my mind?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because to be honest, it's been very difficult for us at the beginning, when our resources were fairly limited in terms of someone monitoring the ads like so carefully. So we now have a head of marketing who's come in, and she was actually a part-timer at the beginning. So she essentially started by looking at every little small move that we have on Facebook, on Google Analytics, but also like our SEO, like anything small that moves can actually then generate something really, really big. So we didn't have that data at the beginning. So our return of investment, for example, from Facebook was really, really bad. And we just didn't have the capacity to stay, so closely focused to monitoring each and every ad. And so she essentially did this on a almost part-time capacity at the beginning, and then almost full-time basis. And we've completely changed. The spend has really gone down, and the efficiency has gone so much up. But again, she has tested so many narratives, and every little thing that seems to be working you keep doing, and then everything that doesn't seem to be working you change. So we've really done this over the course of a year, basically, and finally it's starting to make sense. But again, it's a very, very slow process. And in terms of narrative in general, I would say not to lose focus, because again, as the team has grown, we've found it really difficult to make sure that it was still exactly what my co-founder and I really want and believe in, which is, we believe, the revolutionary idea and what people are going to buy in. But obviously it's harder to sell to anyone because it's a new concept. And so it's sometimes easy to just say, well, we're just another nanny agency and this is what we do. Well, actually, we don't want to use those words anymore, because they don't necessarily give us justice, right? Because then you're just comparing yourself to existing alternatives that are not really doing what you're doing. So again, for us, it was very important to get some advisors on board, do a big brainstorm, and really come up with what it is, why are we doing this again? Remind yourself, and then, retest those narratives that have always been the important ones, but you've kind of compromised on to be able to sell your product or service early stage, if it makes sense. So we're now trying to really go back in with the concept, but obviously concept building takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of like PR involved, which we don't have any money for at the moment. So it's very much like something that you need to sort of continue building on a kind of DIY basis.
All right, the last topic, and I appreciate how much detail you're sharing and the answers too. This is super useful. The last topic I want to touch on before we go to the questions. Can you talk to us a little bit about crowdfunding, and what benefit that's brought to you? What has been like time consuming? Are you happy you did it? Tell us the deets.
Yeah. That's a good question. We are reconsidering it for the future. So overall, I would say positive experience. But we did a sort of reward-based crowdfunding for the most part, to essentially support us while we were fundraising, with existing customers, essentially buying packages in advance, which we thought was going to be a bit difficult. We obviously had to discount them quite a lot. So margins were fairly low on those, but it really helped us out in terms of getting us to surviving while we were fundraising. So really, really recommend anything reward based where your customers can get involved. We had a few customers that are still pretty much like ambassadors for us since, because they had a chance to tell us how much they love us and that they want to support our business. So that's been really positive overall. Equity-based crowdfunding, we've kind of done a kind of internal one, so we couldn't go all in like as you would with one of the platforms like Seedrs or Crowdcube, but we're actually looking at that now in a kind of sort of bridge round situation, because again, if you have that customer base and customers love what you do and can sort of identify with it, then it can be really, really beneficial. Again, it is a lot of work in terms of LinkedIn promotion. You really need to have a lot of time to like go out there and promote whatever you're doing. So we were really overworked, and I would, next time I hope that I would plan it a little bit more in advance and make sure that we have a little bit more capacity, but it is worth it in the sense that you get that loyalty.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, we'll move now to questions. Daniel, why don't you go first? And then Ying, the question that you put in the chat, do you want to re-ask the question from yesterday live? If so, I'll go to you after Daniel.
Awesome. Thank you. Morning, everyone. And per DM, thank you again and hope the event went well. Corinna, hello. Thank you for your presentation. Really, really great insights. I suppose just to give you a quick, brief overview of what we're building, we're basically helping gyms increase their member engagement. There's a huge churn problem within the industry, and we do that through peer group matching. So that's what we're trying to solve. Corinna, just want to ask you a few questions about the business model and how your platform works. I suppose first and foremost, I mean, it's great that you and your co-founder, you got that split, you know, both sides of the network there. You're a creative yourself, and your co-founder's on the sort of parent side, so that's awesome. I suppose business model wise, I'm presuming there's some sort of subscription commission from the creative who's booking onto the platform. How does that work? And I suppose secondly, in terms of the bookings, are these usually one-off bookings? Are they multiple weeks? And how does it work in terms of what the requirements for the child should be? Do they get a program to follow? How do you do that assessment? What exactly should be covered to basically make sure that that child gets ultimately what it is that they want to get out of it?
That's great. Great questions. Thanks. So yeah, first of all, we operate with an agency model. So we take a commission on top of all our hourly rates. And essentially our creatives are already paid pretty well compared to industry standards. So our prices are fairly premium compared to the industry, but obviously we can do that because of the quality that we're offering. So we need to keep up with that. We offer both ad hoc and recurring services, but for us, it's all about that flexibility, which is really hard to find in the industry. And again, we can offer that because of the creatives that we have on our books that also like that flexibility. So the majority of our revenue comes from recurring bookings. However, those are the hardest to match because we are competing against other nanny agencies, really, and we are slightly more expensive than them. But also our creatives may be leaving soon, you know, they're not the most committed people. And so there is, you know, there is that need of families understanding the nature of things. Ad hoc bookings have been really difficult. Well, kind of smaller percentage because operating as an agency without the technology to support us, obviously it's not really worth families going through an agency to book a third party essentially, despite the fact that we, you know, really hold their hand throughout the process. If you just want someone for a few hours tomorrow, it's not worth it. So that's where our app will really come into play, really extend that group. And we think that's, you know, that's ultimately what makes us different, is the ad hoc capacity, but recurring really good because you can really show that people stay with you for as long as possible. We will also have a membership model with the app that will essentially allow people to access discounts off the recurring bookings. So that's how we'll sort of make it work. And then your question about sort of how can you make sure that the child gets what they want, what the family wants for them, and it's kind of a personalized thing. Well, we essentially, when we speak to a customer first or they register their interest, we obviously prompt them with our magic ingredients. So we have something called a learning journey. So we have music, movement, art, languages. And essentially what we ask them is, which one are you mostly interested in? Languages could be any language, right? And again, just tell us a little bit about your child. And we have developed a few sort of questions. For example, are they on the sort of shy side? Are they very active? That sort of thing. And obviously, if the child has any special needs, then the family would let us know, that sort of thing. But on the app, this is all done on a self-service basis. So the same filters that we apply as an agency when we search for a match, and essentially then we still call out, make a call out, and then whoever gets back to us, we can share their profiles. But essentially on the app, families can use the same search function filters. So again, it's about using, you know, anything from the creative skills to their experience. If they have any preference in terms of care, obviously they can see the location. So these are all the things that we've essentially learned families are looking for through us, and that will be sort of self-service available on the app. And that way they can obviously then start chatting with the creative and seeing whether they're a good match. It is always, you know, it's never guaranteed because there's a personality fit, but if you can get at least those few requirements right, then you're really narrowing down the pool. And so that's been working well for us so far. But what you're building sounds really exciting. So yeah, look forward to seeing it developing.
Amazing, thank you, and looking forward to seeing the next Emma Watson coming from your platform. Thank you.
All right, Ying, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Yesterday I asked basically, I haven't started the investment journey, but I am, I guess, a bit wary because I know the kind of odds are stacked up against me being a female founder, but also being a person of color. And the stat that I shared yesterday was something like, out of all VC funding, only 2% in 2022 went to women. So I would love to hear more about your experience, how you tackled it, and yeah, how you got through it. And if you have any advice and tips, because I think that would be invaluable for a lot of us here.
Yeah, thank you for this. I mean, yeah, we're all in this together, aren't we? Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I've considered everything throughout the process. I considered to like almost change my name in my email signatures, you know, like Corey, which is a bit more gender neutral. Maybe people would hope that being a man, you know, the beginning of it. Anyhow, I won't do this. It's just a bit much. But, you know, you really go into this loop of thinking, what is wrong? You know, why can't I access that? And I think, you know, ultimately, it is about them investing in people that look and feel similar, right? They can see their sort of younger selves in them, and that's why we don't, I guess, look and sound and feel the same. But at the same time, some people will be aware of this and will try to fight their bias, and will also be open to listening to someone competent. I think it may take us a bit longer to win someone over. I think that's what my experience is. You know, at the beginning you may be almost dismissed, but then you need to sort of show them how persistent you are. So for us, sort of campaigns have been a really successful way to get people to engage with us and to feel a little bit of FOMO and to feel like, oh, maybe they should invest in our business. So you want to build a sort of email list of all the people that you think may be good matches, funds, individuals, really sort of curate that, but also keep adding to it and keep them in the loop. And you'll see that at the beginning, if you sort of address these people on a cold basis and you're a woman and you're trying to get a meeting with them, or you know, you even manage to get a meeting, that may not go anywhere. But them seeing your metrics constantly improving and updates from your team and, you know, whatever you're doing, that will warm them up, and the bias may fade away to some extent. So that's my experience personally, that it just requires a bit more time. And it's about also understanding what makes a male founder so much more successful, which sometimes is just being a little bit more, I guess, aggressive with figures, a bit more confident in, yeah, this will definitely be a unicorn, 100% success, although they know it's not, right? But they sort of come across, well, they can come across that way a bit more frequently than we do. And I think for me, sort of learning that was also quite helpful. I wouldn't say that I've mastered it completely, but I'm a little bit more, well, I'm doing the best I can in trying to do that as well, if it makes sense. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank
The
you.
founders, you'll notice both Corinna and Ferran, who spoke on Tuesday, said that updating investors, who even those who weren't initially interested with metrics, was the way that they generated a lot of FOMO. And so it's good to see two founders that strategy has worked for. Okay, I'll take a question from the chat from Nazia. I'm interested to hear if you had any questions about your experience and how it relates to the business idea and how you approach these ideas. And similarly, if you're a non-tech founder, was this a concern for any investors?
Yes, so I'll start with the second one. Yes, it's always a concern when you're a non-tech founder. I'm definitely non-tech founder, and I've proven that I'm a non-tech founder by really finding it very difficult to work with developers to get the technology out. It's been very, very difficult journey for us. Neither of us are technical. We have, however, in the process, well, we thought we met someone who could be a sort of technical partner, and this sort of didn't work out. And now we have got a CTO on board. So I would say, depending on the stage at the beginning, it may not be such a concern because you can build an MVP with pretty much any tools. It may not do exactly what you want, but you can get that done essentially. And then when you do need, depending on whether you're tech enabled or you're actually a tech business, if you're a tech business, you probably want someone. If you're tech enabled, you may not necessarily need a CTO or someone until a bit later on. But for us, it has been time to get a CTO on board, and that was a wonderful decision. And again, it wasn't a sort of scouting process. We just had someone in our network who'd been helping us and advising us for a while, who actually would have made a really good CTO, and that's how we asked him to essentially join us. The first question is sort of how do you get about, I guess, getting a business idea? So this idea was my co-founder's. She essentially did musical babysitting when she was a student herself to make some pocket money. I, at the same time, was a creative student and worked in the creative industries and did kind of the same without really knowing it. So when we met, I probably wouldn't have done this on my own, to be perfectly honest, but when we met, she kind of shared this idea with me, and we kind of, decided, started to brainstorm. For us, it was very sort of natural because I'd worked with agencies doing similar things in the fashion and acting sort of worlds. So I kind of knew how to make how agencies run, I guess. So that really helped. And she kind of knew how to, I guess, communications and marketing side of things, and for me was more the operations and systems side. So we just had like all the right skills to start thinking about it, I guess. Get people who have skills that you don't have on board to brainstorm with you, and things will come essentially. She started with the musical babysitting because I had a more sort of holistic whole creativity side of things. We thought, well, that's a bit restrictive, why don't we do this instead? And it's just something that comes together. On your own, it's probably very difficult because unless you have a fully fledged idea, but getting other people on board is definitely a great way to see if it sounds as well. And then joining an accelerator or incubator, that can be, really good because they actually guide you through, the whole process of building a business plan. You can see if it actually can make money, which is ultimately the only way that you can run a business, a profit, business for profit.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to, I see content has been coming up a few times in the chat, so I'm going to ask that question, and then Juan and Frederick will jump to you. So the question is, could you tell us a bit more about the sort of content you deployed to build up your funnel and to get people signed up? Did you create a few blog posts and then start to derive the rest from that? So he's also asking about landing pages with FAQs or slide decks.
Yes, there's a bit of everything, right? Initially, we did start with the blogs because they were fairly easy for us to create in our own time, essentially. And also, we are quite present as founders online and in general. So we try to sort of share our personal experience and go live and that sort of thing. And that, can be done with very limited resources as well. So you can sort of pop into people's socials and create a little video that you can actually then promote on Facebook. You don't need this massive setup essentially, but for us, it's a mixture of everything, right? So there's a little bit of sort of blogs that give that sort of trust, and I guess get those customers that are interested in the science and the concept. But then you also have like very short sort of tips and tricks, video reels, that sort of thing on social. We try to have a presence on the main social media, I guess. We can see that some are working better than others, but ultimately you also want to research what people are looking for. So for us, we initially thought that was the sort of tips and tricks kind of content, but actually people are mostly looking for example, French-speaking nanny in London. And so we started actually writing blogs and writing pages on our website that actually kind of reflected that narrative. And so we've gone really big on languages lately because that seems to be something that lots of people are searching for and not many other competitors are doing. So then people come for the language and then they're like, wow, this is also creative. That's really cool. So you don't necessarily need to like get them involved with your concept first thing. It can be what they're, what you expect them to be searching for, or what they prove to be searching for. And again, we've had help from an SEO agency, which has really helped because until then, again, our capacity was pretty limited. But if you can get a sense of what people are looking for, then that can really help you get them in the loop. And then, bit by bit, then they'll see the sort of trust side as well, and then they'll try the service, or they'll get some promotional emails, whatever that is, and everything integrates together. But there was something about, customers need to see you about 10 times, so maybe 5 times before they register, and then 5 times since registering before even converting, especially for a service like ours that requires a lot of trust. So we try to implement as many automations as we can throughout the journey, through emails, through our CRM system, and just generally, retargeting online.
Wonderful, thanks. Okay, Juan, you're up.
Thank you very much. Hey, Corinna, thank you very much for everything. Very useful. It's great to see your journey. I have just a few questions. I also see it in the chat. But I wanted to know, like, especially that I see that the initial 50K that you raised from people was very significant, but how you make sure that that you make the most of it? And also, what was your approach on finding the angel investors? Like, how you also make sure that they were like the right ones, and what was your strategy regarding that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I guess in terms of making the most of the initial money, looking back, I don't think I did make the most of it. But again, it was 2020. You can always look back and think, oh, I could have done things better. But essentially for us, it was giving us the time to really research and learn as much as we could and make mistakes. So we have made quite a few mistakes. The technology side of things, to be perfectly honest, didn't work out at the beginning. We needed to learn more about our customers before we could build the technology. So that money was essentially wasted. Obviously, it wasn't the whole bit, but it was still pretty much, not ideal. And then the other side obviously was the marketing one, but when it's so little money, you're still trying to to learn so many aspects. So I would say focus on what you want to learn the most, what will get you the most traction, right? And for us, we kind of compromised a little bit on building this big brand and building the concept, because we just wanted to get that revenue to come through and just find a niche and find a place where we could start, because we needed to make money, because we didn't raise that much and we needed to essentially keep going. And so, whatever you value the most, you can very much focus on. Then again, be compassionate with yourself. You'll make mistakes, and it's just about learning from them. And we certainly have made so many, but I think, learning from them is the best thing that you can do, right? Because eventually you'll make a mistake. So it's just about having that open attitude, I guess.
Thank you. Okay, Frederick.
Hi, Corinna. Thanks so much for the session. I know you know that I love what you guys are doing. Very interesting to hear a bit more about the story behind it. I had a question, and I think someone else, I think Daniel, asked it in the chat as well. Is that like the way that we sometimes have used agency platforms before is very much about the matching. And look, do you sometimes see with your users that once they have been matched with someone that they really like, how do you prevent them to not use the platform anymore, like just go directly to the creatives? And do you have some, I think you mentioned membership, so that's probably one way. Are you Ofsted registered, and can you offer tax-free childcare and these kind of things? Or do you not really see that problem for your platform?
Yeah, thanks, Frederick. Nice to see you. So I guess that's a very good question that every investor asks us, and everyone asks us. Essentially, the parents will try to go behind our backs and pay the creatives cash in hand. That will always happen because it's cheaper. Well, maybe not always, but there's always going to be people that will want to try that. What you want to do is get the loyalty of your community, right? So for us, it's getting those creatives loyal. And that I'm aware of, this hasn't happened. It may have, but it may have been done very sneakily in a way that we're not aware of. But lots of the time, creatives have come to us and have said, "Oh, the parent offered me cash. What should I do?" And how do you build that trust? So first of all, we pay them really well. We look after them. So we obviously, any family that comes to us, we also kind of vet the family in some capacity, and we reassure the creative that they get support when working with us. And to be honest, working with families is not always the easiest. We also offer free training opportunities. The community is pretty good. I'm not saying we've nailed the sort of community engagement aspect yet, but we do offer community events, and we have a sort of WhatsApp group where they can sort of share their sort of creative endeavors and meet other people. And in general, they have that personal touch with us, which we'll still try to maintain even as we grow with sort of networkers or people in, you know, specific areas that can build that community. So we're building a sort of buddy up scheme where a new creative is matched with a sort of more senior one that's been with us for a bit longer, to give support. And people actually really like that community element, especially if they need to find some sort of purpose. But the main USP is with our app, they'll get paid within 48 hours and it's all straight into their bank account. So again, relying on a random family to give you cash in hand or paying you through a bank account, and this family may not need you tomorrow, and knowing that there's an app where you can get paid 48 hours after any shift is pretty good. So it is finding that like soft spot, I guess, you know, for us. The pay for the creators is always a big issue. So for us, that's something that we're also tapping into.
Amazing, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. By the way, we're having a little Zoom issue, so I'm just gonna stop the recording now, but everything else.